Hello, I'm Daniela. In today's class, we're going to slow stitch a little element to add to our fabric books, or maybe even an ornament for a tree. This project uses a bunch of Christmas ribbon in all different widths and colors, and even textures. In today's project, I'm actually weaving a big piece of twine. It's really thick and it adds a textured element. If you prefer a flat look, just use flat ribbon, just your standard ribbon. But I really like the little chunkiness and the added effects that it makes. It creates a little bit of shadows, a little wrinkles. It's just very fun. At least that's my taste for it. I'm going to show you how I do it in today's video, and I'll also show you a variation. So let's get started. So for this project, I pull out a bunch of my Christmas ribbon. Now it doesn't have to be Christmas. You can use this for any season or theme. I just happen to like the way this looks to use the Christmas ribbon because the Christmas ribbon is so plentiful and it kind of matches. Now you can do some effort and really coordinate it like I did here. I have my off-whites and a lot of beiges. And then I just have a little bit of accent of red and greens. Now depending on the size piece that you're going to use, that will determine the thickness of the ribbon you want. So you can use really thick ribbon, you just won't get a lot of weaving going on. Or you could alternate it. So even if you had just one thick piece and all thinner pieces, that's fine too. It's not going to look perfect like a checkerboard. It's going to look like a woven piece. So I'll just choose a few ribbons. I think I'll put this one aside and maybe that one too. And I'll just use these ribbons. So the first thing I do is I just start, and I can start with either going up and down or side to side. Just want one direction first. And I'll cut some ribbon. So I'll just cut a bunch of ribbon out and then I can see where I want to go with it. Now some of this ribbon is printed and some of it has words, so I might want to play around with that as well to get the words to show. Or I'm not. It's really the beauty of this project. Now some of my ribbon is highly textured and some of it has this interesting edge, and some of it has a blank side and a printed side, and then sometimes it has a good side and a bad side. But you're not required to use any of the intended sides. This is your project. Now this ribbon and this ribbon both have wire edges, so I, for this project, don't want the wire. So I'll just go to the end and remove that wire. And now I've taken my wire edge and made it just into standard ribbon. And I do this because I don't want the little structure that the wire creates, and I don't want to get poked with the wire. But if you want to leave your wire in, go right ahead. So I'm going to start by having my weaving go up and down. I think I want Merry Christmas to show, or at least part of it. So I'm not going to start it perfectly up top. I'm also going to kind of center this, or maybe just off center. So maybe I'll start it from here. So I'll cut this piece a little larger than I need. And then I'll just play around with the other pieces. I want to create them side by side. I can flip it because sometimes the pieces have a little warp to them. And I'm going to save all my little ribbon scraps for now. Now right now I'm just auditioning where I want the pieces. I can definitely change this around as the time comes. And already I can see that I want some kind of contrast with the red and the beige. So I'll play around creating those designs that I want, and then we'll come back and see what the piece looks like. So there I have my piece in the design that I want. So I'm kind of alternating a solid color and then a print, and then I have a pattern, and then more or less a solid color, and so on. It's not symmetrical, but it is balanced for what I want, and I really like the way this looks. So the first thing I need to do now that I have the basic design is to pin that down, and I want to take my time and really pin each piece right to the edge really neatly. And when I pin it, I'm going to leave just a little trim at the edge that I can stitch through. So I'll just set them down and set each one with a pin. So I've set everything down with a pin. It's nicely spaced the way I want it, and now I can start my process. Now I have a few things to decide. I purposely left a little bit of fabric on either end because I can trim that down. I know I want at least this size for my finished little piece. And now I can decide if I want my ends to stick out or if I want to tuck them under to make a neat end. I think I want them to stick out. This gives me a little leeway, and I can trim them afterwards as much as I wish. So right now I'm going to choose a color, and I'm going to just choose this beige. And this is going to be my thread. It's already knotted at the end. And I'm going to start at the top here, and I'm going to turn this to the side. And I'm just going to stitch down all of this ribbon. I'm going to try and make a neat little line, stitching right at the edge. And if the pins are in the way, I'll just move them out of the way. And I'm just stitching down to hold all my ribbon in place. So I'll make a complete line of stitching from the top to the bottom here, and I'll be holding them in place. After I stitch this first ribbon, I'll show you what I mean, I'll remove that pin. This will help me to decide if I need to move the ribbon that's next to it into position. If I didn't pin it straight or if it moved in the process. So I have that first ribbon down and it's nice and secure. So I'll just unpin the next one, move it to where I want it, and continue to stitch it across. And I'm just stitching it down to our background, holding it in place. And this way I can not only remove the pins, but when I start my weaving, I'll have a nice strong basis for that. So I'll continue stitching the length of these ribbons. So now I have the row of stitches that kind of anchors the ribbon in place. As you can see, they still have a little bit of flare to them, and that's great. So now I want to choose ribbon that I'm going to cross this way. If you want it to be cohesive, you want to choose like maybe 2 or 3 colors. You want to just limit it to the number of ribbons you have. If you like it haphazard, then use as much ribbon as you like. So I think I'm going to use just 2 types of ribbon. I'll use this red ribbon, so I'll cut a few strands of this. I already have 3 cut, but I'll come back. And I'm going to cut this ribbon, this cording here. It's kind of like wrapped twine. And I'll weave that in as well. So I'll cut a few more pieces of both of those ribbons. So again, I'm just going to play with my ribbon to make sure I have enough of it here. So I'm moving it down the length of my piece, and I can decide exactly how far down I want to go with this ribbon. And that looks pretty good. After I weave it, if I decide I need more, I'll come back for more. So I'll just set this aside, and I'll start with my first piece. My first piece can be either ribbon, and I just want to weave it over and under. So I'm going to start by going underneath that first piece, and I want a little tail on the end, and then over the next piece, and then under, and then over, and then under, and then over. Just like that. I can line it up as tight as I want to get to that stitching, and that looks pretty nice. So before I weave my next piece, I want to pin this down in just a few places, and I'll start at one side, and I'm just going to take my thread again, and I'm going to continue with that single color, and I'm going to stitch it in. So I'll start right at the edge here of that ribbon, and I'll stitch straight down. I'll do the back stitch at first, and then I'll just continue down. Now these stitches are just tacking it in place. I'll come back after everything is completely woven and stitch it further. But for right now, I really like the way this is looking, and I'm getting just a few stitches in. So that's looking pretty good. Again, I can tighten it up. So now I'm going to take my next ribbon, in this case it's my textured ribbon, and I'm going to do the opposite. So here I'm going to go on top, and then the next one I'll be on the bottom, and then on top, and then on the bottom, and then on top, and the bottom. So I can just lay it down, put my ribbons on top, and then just line it up accordingly. Now I can put a pin in there if I want. I just want to make sure my ribbons are nice and straight. And I'm going to continue to stitch this down. Now for this one, because it's such a thick piece, I'm not going to stitch through it. I'm just going to make a couching stitch. So I'll go over it just a couple of times to hold it in position. And then I'll come up one more time and just set that aside. So now I want to go back to my first ribbon, and I'll do the same thing. So I'm going under and over and so on. And I'll do this with the remaining pieces, stitching them, weaving them, stitching them, weaving them, and so on. And I'll do this and I'll have just the two sides stitched down and show you what that looks like. So now I've stitched around two of the sides here, and I've really tried to make sure that I've moved my various ribbon around and I've pinned each one in place. Now on this one side here, this last row is a little wonky. I haven't pinned it down. I'm going to work it as I go, but I know that it's in the right formation here. All my reds are on top and all my cords here are below that Merry Christmas ribbon. I've also trimmed these edges, and I've kept these ones with text long in case I want to use them in my work. I can trim them down further, but for now that's going to work out just fine. So now I'm going to take my needle, turn my piece around again, and I'm going to stitch everything in place. So I'll start with the first intersection of ribbon right at the corner here, and I'm going to try and make sure my ribbon is as straight as it can be. So I'll just make 2 or 3 stitches where the two ribbons intersect right on the edge here, trying not to catch my thread around the additional ribbon. And now as I continue on, I'm going to remove the pins, and particularly in the beginning here, I just want to make sure that each of my ribbons are neatly organized, so I might have to just move them down just a little bit. So I'll just continue stitching all the way to the end. Now that I'm at the final edge, I have one more row to sew. So I'm going to just take it very slow because I don't have a lot of give here, and sew right up that row, right to the top. And I'm going to go over the ribbon, and then when I get to the ribbon over here that's cording, I'm going to do that couching stitch again. So I'm going to make sure it's in place. Then I stitch down and back up and over it. I can do that just a couple of stitches. And then I want to stitch through the next ribbon here, which is this red ribbon, and I want to make sure that that printed Christmas ribbon is in position. So it just might be a little more challenging because I didn't leave myself enough fabric, but there's always a workaround for things. So here I have all 4 sides stitched around my ribbon weaving to hold it into place. And now I can just trim off the edges here. Now it's less important what size they are, just that it's neat enough to use. And if you're not sure how you're going to use it, you want to leave yourself enough leeway. So if I look at the back here, none of my ribbons are caught in my stitches. It lays flat. The more bulk you introduce with your cording or your bulky ribbon, the more bulkier it will be, and likewise the more textured. So this is a really great piece. I like this piece. It's very interesting. The colors are quite unpredictable, really, for Christmas colors. Yes, it has the red and green, but it has that neutral as well. And because these were held down with a couching stitch, they have some give. I can move them around if I need to. Now you can stop here, but I want to take it a little further by adding more stitching and introducing just a few little elements to my piece. So I want to add a few more things here. I can just add some stitches with whatever colors I want to coordinate, and I can add that strategically so it holds down my piece a little flatter. Or if I look around and I see some spots that are bare, I can maybe add another ribbon and I can thread it through there, or a really thin one, or even both. So I'm going to take this red grosgrain ribbon and I'm going to feed it through, and I'll just go over and under just because that cording gives me that opportunity. So again, I have my piece exactly where I want it, And now I'll stitch down, holding that ribbon in place. I'll stitch a little at the end and then over each of the cording to hold it down. I have this other ribbon here. Not sure if I'm going to use it. It's a little bit too much red for me, I think. But then I have this leftover ribbon from here. It's the one that says Merry Christmas. And I might want to use this as well. So I can weave that in and out of these red stripes if I want. Or I can just save the ribbon to use on my page. It's a tough decision, but you can see where this goes, where there's lots of opportunities to create your piece. Now, I'm going to stitch these down and I'll show you how it looks. So I stitched that ribbon down and then I decided to add a row of stitches. And I could continue with this really for a long time, weaving different threads through, maybe adding some beads. And then it's ready to go into my fabric book. Now, because I made it pretty large and because I have the extra pieces, I can really play around with how much I want to cut and then just stitch these down, or maybe even leave some of them open. It kind of is a little interactive element. Now when we created this and I decided to leave the edges uncut here just because it gives me more options when I finally attach it to my piece, I wanted to show you how nice it looks if you just fold the edges over. So you have another weaving here, and depending on how you want to use it, you can just add it to your fabric book, and it's just richly textured. And I just love both of these pieces. It's not something I do every day, but it does take advantage of that Christmas ribbon. And there are so many colors and sizes, depths. It's really very, very pretty. I hope this helps you to see Christmas ribbon in a new light. So that's how I create my little woven piece to use in my slow stitching. I use Christmas ribbon, which makes it very festive for the occasion, but you can use this any time of year just to add some texture and some background to your pages. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. Thanks for joining me today.